Good evening, everyone. This is Aaron Heinz, and on behalf of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, Office of Catholic Education, Department of Technology, I would like to thank you for joining us this evening as we kick off our 2018-2019 webinar series. This entire series will focus on preparing for the Google Level 1 certification exam. Ms. Alissa DeVito, our distinguished presenter this evening, will have more details and information about Google certification. And I just heard that you cannot see my screen, so let me make sure that we are presenting my screen. So, pardon the technical difficulties that we are having. There we go. Had to make myself the presenter. So now you can see my screen. So now that we have that done, before we start the presentation, let us begin as we do all good things in prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this time together. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we endeavor to equip future saints, and we ask this through Mary, our mother, and Jesus, your Son. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. So our agenda this evening is as follows. First, a reminder that this webinar will be archived on our YouTube channel located at youtube.com/AOPtech. During this presentation, you are welcome to ask questions in our back channel chat room. This year, we are using a new tool. At the end of last school year, one of our favorite tools, Today's Meet, went away. And tonight we will be showcasing a brand new cool tool called Yo Teach. This app was developed by the Pedagogic and Active Learning Mobile Solution PALMS project as part of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So AOP Tech is truly using global resources. This program has some great features, including an annotations feature that can be used by students during class to show their work or thinking. To get to our back channel chat room, we are using the URL shortener YellKey. If you type in yellkey.com/history, it will redirect you to our back channel chat room. Just a reminder to please introduce yourself when you get to the room so that we may welcome you as there as well. And feel free to ask questions during the presentation in that chat room. And with that being said, I'm going to turn the controls over to our presenter this evening. She is the Associate Director of Education Technology, Miss Alissa DeVito. Alissa, welcome. How are you doing this evening?
Hello. Hi, everybody. Let me show my screen. Let's see. Can you see me?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us on our kickoff of the 2018-2019 webinar series. We're so excited to be back. How is everybody? We have missed you. I hope that your school year has started off wonderfully and smoothly, or as smooth as it can, as all things in education. Sometimes we have to be a bit resilient when we are teachers. As Aaron mentioned, this is our year-long focus on helping folks obtain the Level 1 Google Educator certification. Our AOP Tech team has been hard at work working on this series, as well as all of us are L1, L2 certified. Aaron is a Google trainer, and I just became a Google trainer myself. So we are all set to share with you different things this evening and take a look at some of the skills needed for Gmail, contacts, and groups. So what I'm going to talk to you tonight about are two different things. Because this is the first in the webinar series, and we are looking at that certification and helping equip folks with skills needed for that, I am going to talk to you a little bit to start about what that certification process is like. Since we've all been recent at the AOP Tech teams, we're all in the middle of our refreshment cycles. I just refreshed mine. Aaron and I were just discussing that other members on the team were up for the refreshment cycle. So we wanted to fill you in on what that's like. So that way, as you're attending these webinars throughout the year and practicing on your own, you can have a better idea of what that overall picture is going to look like. Then we're going to look at the skills that come up frequently in Gmail contacts and groups. And as Aaron mentioned, and I'd like to echo again, this is really a skills-based webinar, as will the series be, to help deepen your knowledge base or refresh your knowledge base, depending upon where you are in your Google journey, rather than integration focused. For every other webinar after this first one in the series, instead of a commercial, and this one is the commercial essentially, about the certification process, we're going to be featuring a tool from a teacher in the Archdiocese at the end of each webinar for more of that integration piece there. So this webinar is a little bit of an anomaly, but after this, you'll get a little bit of skills and a little bit of integration. So we hope all of those things meet your needs along the way, and that you enjoy your journey. So let's talk first about what that certification process looks like. Google has a ton of resources, as do we here at AOP Tech, but I know that when you go to the website, if you're not feeling very confident in your Google skills yet, it can seem overwhelming. So I want to tell you about what that's like, because really many of our teachers all across the Archdiocese are well equipped to be able to take that exam, and we are here to help you along the way. So there's two main certification levels. There's educator level 1, and what that's looking at is, do you as an educator, do you understand the fundamental skills of Google tools and how to implement them? Level 2 then looks at more advanced skills and deep integration. So there are two levels. I highly recommend both. After, if you so choose to continue pursuing your Google certification journey, there's also Google certified trainers once you have level 1 and level 2, which a lot of times you'll see abbreviated L1 and L2. So if you see that someplace, that's what that means. And there's also Google Innovator, and that's a really elite group, and you travel to meet with others who have been accepted to that academy style. So that's a lot of options for you as a teacher, and they're really great certifications to have as an endorsement for your personnel file, for your resume, and just personal knowledge, growth, and satisfaction, really. So to earn that certification, you will need to ultimately complete an exam. And every piece of your practical, hands-on classroom experience is going to help you along the way with that. The more you use these tools, the better you will feel, the more confident you will feel, and easier that certification and exam process will be. We have some resources that we'll be sharing to help you prepare, as well as Google has a training portal that I'll mention in a few moments again. I think my personal big tip is to sometimes think a little bit googly. And I know that seems like a strange phrase, but if you go through their modules, which we'll talk about again in a moment, you'll learn kind of the way that they ask and answer questions. And if you can train your brain a little bit to think like that, it goes a long way. When we're looking at that level 1 certification, again, having the hands-on experiences with the entire G Suite tools. And we specifically in this series looked to talk about some tools that we often don't get to when we're looking at professional development sessions. We have lots of webinars on our and resources and videos on our YouTube channel for things like Classroom, Docs, Drive. And when our team is asked to come in for professional development, those are our biggest requests. But that's only a fraction of what's on the actual exam. And you'll definitely use those skills 100%. But there's a lot more to the G Suite than just that. Google has a fundamentals course. You get credit for going through those modules and completing. There's like little practice questions, review questions, almost the same way if you were looking at a social studies textbook and you had your 4 questions at the end of the chapter. to summarize. If they work just like that. Google does track that you're completing that, so you get credit for it. There are additional practice questions available to learn Google's style of questioning. I think that's really important when you're looking at that exam. It just definitely helps. Practice and play. And then you'll be ready to take that exam. So here's a couple things I want to talk about with the exam. First, when you register, you'll receive the exam within 24 hours. It's not immediate. So don't think you sit down and register and you're going to take it right in that moment. I've had it take a couple hours. I've had it take a little bit longer. I've had it take a little bit shorter than that. And what it gives you is basically a specific account to go into. You won't be using your school-based account. So that way they can track what you're doing. Once you receive that exam, you have 7 days to log in and take the exam itself. It is 180 minutes. You do not have the option to take a break or pause and return to it. And I really would suggest setting aside for yourself the full 180 minutes. And I know that seems so long, but it is really necessary, and it is a time commitment. So if you've got little ones running around, see if there's somebody who can watch them for that, or set up a play date at a friend's house. Kind of get yourself a glass of water and get ready to sit down and take that exam. I wish that was something I had known the very first time I took the level 1 exam. I thought, oh, how long is it really going to take me? And it really took me a while. It's comprised of 30 multiple choice questions and then 12 practical scenarios. For me and the type of test taker that I am, the multiple choice questions took me a really long time because I would sit and I would really analyze all the options and sometimes get in my head a little bit. I'm a nervous standardized test taker, so not surprising that for me was the harder part. And I flew through the practical scenarios. I know for some people it works just the opposite way. So, you have that knowledge of how you are as a test taker to kind of know to pace yourself. And that's really what I would like to mention about it, is pacing yourself. For the level 1 exam, there is a $10 fee to take that exam as well. So Google has some resources for you. And following this webinar, you will get a link to these resources. It includes the fundamentals course, some links for the fundamentals course, practice questions, and certification. You'll see when I clicked that link just now, it asked me to choose an account. You can see all the accounts I've got going there. But it asked me to choose an account, and that's because it tracks where you follow or those practice questions that I mentioned in the units. The fundamentals course is broken down by units. Some have 5 lessons, 3 lessons, 2 lessons. They range from about 35 minutes to about 85 minutes. And I think a lot of it depends upon your comfort level going in with a variety of Google tools. I will say for me personally, on the level 2 test, I spent a good hour just practicing pivot tables in Google Sheets because it's not my strong suit. And I did that through the fundamentals training course for the level 2, which is also available there. So use what you know as prior knowledge and prior experience with the Google tools to be able to pace yourself accordingly. I also want to point out to you, this is my favorite checklist, and you can get quite a few different ones online. This is by Eric Kurtz, and it's a checklist of major skills that are popular to come up in those exams and practical scenarios, in those multiple choice, excuse me, and practical scenarios. And it's a really great baseline way. When I first found this, it was awesome to look through and be like, okay, I know all the skills for classroom and slides and forms, but I don't have a lot of skills right now in Google Tasks or Sites, and I need to go review those. So it's a perfect tool to help you gauge where you are in that journey. As always, too, there are AOP Tech resources. This is a little bit of a commercial for us. Hope you don't mind. But our YouTube channel that we've mentioned a couple times, the webinar series, and I do want to remind you that if you attend 4 of the 6 live webinars, so my folks who are on right now with me, if you attend 4 of the 6, you are entered to win a Chromebook. So we hope to see you back all throughout the year. EdCamp AOP, I am sure, will have some googly topics, as it always does. And our tech coach team, myself, Aaron, Annabelle, everyone's here to help support you on that journey. So please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us if and when you have a question, whether it be just about how to use it in your classroom or whether you're looking for some support when it comes to that exam. All right. Let's jump into some skills. Hope that helped everybody clear up a little bit of what that process is like. It's a little overwhelming when you first look at it. So we're going to start in Gmail, and we're going to look at some essential skills that come up in Gmail. Know that with each of these, when you get this resource presentation, there's extra videos that are built in besides our webinar. Sometimes it helps hearing it from different voices a couple times to make you feel more confident. And I wanted to make sure that they were in there for you. So the video tutorials that are there are from great resources online, some great YouTube channels that I like to follow and I like to look at when I'm learning new skills too. So they're there for you for the future, especially on things like filters and labels. I know they can get a little confusing. So we're going to jump into Gmail. And what I have here is a dummy account, essentially, because we are recording and this is going on our YouTube channel. Have to be careful not to show personal information and things like that. So we're in a demo student account right here, but Gmail is the same nonetheless because Gmail's turned on for them. So I just wanted, because you see my name here a whole bunch of times for the recipient or from the sender, wanted you to know why that was. So in Gmail, we can do a couple things, and where I want to start, and I'm just going to minimize some things here, there we go, is looking at changing this view. So one of the things that you can do in Gmail is customize your view. Up here, if I go to the top right-hand corner, I can change how the pane is split. So right now I don't have a split going on. It just shows all my messages. I can change it so that way when I select a message, I see the full message underneath. By using that little arrow, that's a horizontal split. I also can do a vertical split. So that way when I select a message, it shows up on the right-hand side. So you can change whether you want no split at all, vertical split, or horizontal split. That's one way that you can customize your Gmail inbox. One of the other ways, by going to the gear wheel, which universal skill, universal throughout Google, is the settings wheel. They just changed Classroom, so Classroom now has that same settings wheel. It's a universal. One of the other things that you can choose is display density. What display density means is it's going to change the amount of space in between those messages. So default, you can see kind of the example here, and I get these little previews for the different attachments that might be there. You can see that they're active right now in some things that I have. This is a Google Drawing, this is a Google Doc, another Google Doc. Let me open that back up again. I can make it comfortable, which eliminates those little kind of bubbles that are an attachment or Google Doc preview, and it puts the little paper clip on the right-hand side. Or compact, which decreases the amount of space in between the messages. So I'm going to take the messages I have here and turn it on compact, and you can see how much of a difference that made. comfortable. Spaces is out a bit here. And then I'll go back to the default. And now you can see how it was before, a decent amount of space between those messages, and you get this little attachment previewed thing. So those are some ways that you can customize. You can also configure your inbox. And what that means, and this is a question that kind of comes up a lot. Right now, you'll see, if I exit out, I have two tabs. I have primary, and then I have social. This social tab happens to be empty at the moment. Some folks just have primary. Some have primary, social, and promotions. And I'll get a question during training, how come I don't have that? Or how come I have that and so does not? That's because you can choose the type of inbox. So you can have primary, right now I have, is person-to-person conversations and messages that by default just don't appear in other tabs. Social is messages that come from social networking sites or social media. You could add in promotions, which is marketing type emails. This is my favorite to make sure is turned on my personal email for all those coupons that you might receive. Updates and forums, things from online discussions. So you can select all or as few of those. If I take away social and really just about everything other than something that might be a spam type or junk mail would go to the primary. If I have social and promotions and I select save, you'll see it added in that tab there. So those are some ways that you can edit and customize your inbox. I'm going to jump into now the actual settings of Gmail to point out a couple things. So I go up to the gear wheel in the top right, and then I'm going to select settings. And it takes a moment to load. So it's going to default to your general settings. And though they're not necessarily things that I think come up on the test, I do want to point out just a couple of these that are really useful. Sometimes I'll get a question from an educator that says, all of my messages reply all the time. That might be that your default reply behavior is set to reply all instead of just reply. So that could be something solved. A new general feature is Smart Compose. And what that does is if you start typing a sentence, I'll try composing one that maybe it would use in there right now. How, and you can see if when I typed how, kind of slightly grayed out, it says, are you, question mark. If I hit my tab key and it gives you the little icon, it'll put that full sentence in. That's called Smart Compose. And that really just kind of launched. And it's new, it's taking some getting used to. If that drives you absolutely bonkers, you can turn that off. So I have some accounts where I have it on, and I have some accounts where I have it off. Depends upon my need. I also want to point out to you, this is where you can set your signature to appear at the end of your email, which is always a great tool for educators. Always makes your email look professional. Name, school, grade level or title, email address, school website. That could be a great standard if you're not using a signature of one there. It's also where your vacation responder or out of office message is on. And I'm going to go back up. While I'm here in settings, I do want to point out that when you change settings, because I know that this is a little bit different than the rest of G Suite, it's not auto-saving. You do have to select Save Changes at the bottom when you're working in settings. It just doesn't want to assume it. So I'm going to give that little tidbit there because, again, learn from my mistakes. It's something that I have done on several occasions that I don't want other people to do. I didn't make any changes, so there's no changes to save here. But if I did, I'd have to hit that button. labels. So labels are a teeny bit confusing. I do recognize that. So labels are I'll say kind of like folders. A lot of times I'll get asked, Alyssa, why can't I make a folder in Gmail? You kind of can. It's called a label. And the reason it's a label rather than a folder is that you can put more than one label on a message. So say a parent emails you and you have to loop in the principal. Let's hope these things don't happen to you. And it concerns a 7th grader. You might want it to appear and you might want to flag it or label it as parent, principal, and 7th grade. So that way, if you were to go to any of those little tabs, and this little icon over here on my left are some of the ones that I have. I have one currently in this account named assignments, one Miss D, assuming that this student was making labels for each of their teachers, and one that says OCE updates. A message might apply to more than one thing, whereas a folder, it kind of goes into one silo and one silo only. Labels, a message can have multiple, and we're going to look at how to do that in a moment. But where you create new labels, when you're in settings, it defaults to general, one over from that, labels. Select create new label, and I am going to call this grades. So now that's added to my list. You can see there's no conversations in it right now. Two things here. It asks you if you want to show that label in the label list. That label list is over here on that left-hand side. So if I turn off grades, so you can see if you look closely, on the left-hand side I have assignments, then grades. If I hit hide, you can see that label goes away from the list. It doesn't mean I deleted that label. It just means maybe I don't need that label to appear on that side view. Or sometimes I'll do that if I have nested labels. When I create a new label, you can see I can nest it under. So maybe I'll make a science class and I'm going to nest it under assignments. I'll hit create. You can see how that looks here in the settings. You can see on the left-hand side how that looks here in the label list. If I want it, I can take it away. Show in message list is whether it shows when I'm in an actual message and I do the drop down to assign a label, if it's there. So those are what those two things mean for you there. So let's jump into a message. I'm going to go out of settings. I don't have to hit save here because it's already active. Let me go to that inbox. Here we are back at our inbox. So if I'm inside of a message, I'm going to open this one, has an attachment, and I look up here at these top menu options. I can archive, I can report something as spam, I can delete it, I can mark it unread, so that way maybe it's easier to pop in that inbox. But here's labels. So right now it's in an inbox, so it gets a label of inbox. Maybe I give that to assignments in science class, Miss D. I can put more than one of those on there at the same time. I'm going to select apply. You can see up at the top, there's multiple labels here. That means if I were to go into this science class folder, or excuse me, the science class label, it would be there. If I go into the Miss D one, it's also there. So that's the benefit. You can put more than one label on something because a message might have to do with more than one thing. And it kind of makes it easier when you're saying, where did I put that? That's always an option. The folder with the arrow next to it also means you can move it out of the inbox and into one of those folders that you'd like. So maybe I gave it a label of science class, but I'm going to move it to the assignments. It allows me to do that there. So that's the move to. The other way you can move messages, I can drag them, drop them to the side and into the corresponding label that I'd like them to kind of stay in. Or I can select the message here. I'm back in my primary inbox, move to, and I'll say assignments, and it moves it there for me. It's kind of how you make a label work similar to a folder, if that makes any sense to you. I hope that does. Oh, there's my auto sending message that I sent to myself here to arrive at 7:35, and it did. And that'll lead us into one of the next things. One of the other ways that you can organize messages or draw your attention to them is by adding a star to them. And what that does, it's very similar to the star system in Google Drive, but just when I click into those starred organization, I'll see all the messages that have a star. Just a way to organize them to say, hey, these are super important. The last thing that I want to point out to you in Gmail, before we jump over into contacts and groups, are filters and this search bar up at the top. So this search bar up at the top of Gmail is super dynamic. If you're familiar with utilizing search within Drive, it's a lot like that because you can search a million different ways. You can search by who it's from, who it's to, subjects, date within. I use this date within a lot. Sometimes I'll say it's from Aaron and it is within the past 5 days, things like that. Has an attachment, things like there. So in this case, if I wanted to search, I'll search something from, let me see if I can have, has the subject assignments. Beautiful. And then I can see what had that a keyword there or subject there. So you can do that with a lot of things. And I know in an inbox that would be far more full than this one here. It's more useful. I don't have a lot of messages. So it is kind of easy for me to sort. When you have thousands and thousands of emails, it's a great dynamic search, just like in Drive. But the other thing you can do is once you fill in one of these criteria or pieces of information you're looking for, you can also set a filter. What a filter does is it gives a certain action to a certain item that meets a criteria you set. So for example, I want to set one for when it's from Miss D the teacher, and I'll select create filter. So that way when an email comes in from teacher Miss D, I wanted to add a star because I know as a student that the emails from my teachers are the most important emails that I'm going to receive. I'm going to select create. And you can see I actually had this filter set up earlier just so that way when this new message came, it would put that star right there for me. So I'll do that again with another criteria here. So you might have, I'll say when it has the subject assignment, I can create the filter. When it has an assignment, marked assignment, I can do a lot of different things. I can mark it as read, I can skip the archive inbox, we wouldn't want to do that. Maybe that would also get a star, or I can have it apply a specific label. So when it comes in and it has the keyword assignment, it automatically is going to apply that assignments label. So filters can be really great when you set them up. You do have to be mindful because sometimes if it doesn't match exactly, like it'll not fulfill the filter criteria. I think personally, and this is a personal opinion, I like it best for like messages that I receive from. So I might have a filter put on from the AOP Tech team. So that way it automatically gets that label. I find it works best then, but you can see, I'm just gonna select Aaron here. When I create a filter, I do have lots of options here. I know some folks that, mark things as spam all the time, and then it doesn't work. And so they'll create a filter. Or conversely, I have one administrator who emails me consistently, but it always goes to spam. I took that person's email address and I marked never send it to spam. And now it never goes there again. So just ways that you can make filters work well for you. So those are some big key highlights in Gmail. And I know we spent the bulk of our time there, but that's kind of purposeful. It does come up quite a bit, or at least in my experience, I found it comes up quite a bit that you kind of use Gmail and Drive as your home bases. But if I think about what I do on a day-to-day basis, most of what I do starts off in either Gmail or Drive. One last little tidbit before we jump into contacts, because what we need to learn in contacts is rather small, but very important. I do want to make mention how you add somebody to contacts right from here in your Gmail. You'll be able to manually add them when we go to contacts in a moment, but sometimes that's a bit cumbersome or you don't have time to do that. If you get a message in your Gmail and you hover over the person, you kind of leave it there for a moment, you'll get this beautiful Add to Contacts button. I know I've seen that question come up kind of quite a few times because there's not necessarily when you open the message somewhere to do that. It's when you're hovering over the sender from the inbox, you'll be able to hit Add to Contact. You'll also be able to send an email. You can schedule an event. If it's their actual Google, that's I can send a message or start a video call right from there too. But it does give you the ability of adding a contact right from there. So I hope that's a little tidbit too that helps you in your day-to-day life. I'm going to open my apps launcher in the top right-hand corner, and I'm going to go to Contacts. And another little googly tip, if you didn't know, you can reorder these icons here by grabbing and holding and moving them into the order that you would like. So I tend to put Drive and Classroom up at the top because they're the ones I use most often. Might be a good tidbit for students too if they're having trouble kind of looking all through here to get to what they want. They can rearrange their icons. So when that came about, it made my day. Sometimes it's the little things, right? But for our purposes right now, I'm going to select Contacts. And you can see I just hovered over in Gmail my name as the sender here to add to contacts. Now it says edit contacts. And here I am. Here I am in contacts. So it worked. Huzzah. I can manually add a new contact by using the red new contact button on the left-hand side. You can put their name, their email. You can put as much of this information as you'd like in here to make a contact easier for you. When they're in here, it's easy to pull them up. When you start typing a message in Gmail, it'll look to see if what contacts you have that match what you've started to type first. The big piece, the big skill to know in contacts is creating a group. So this sometimes comes up when you want to create like a parent group email. What you do on the left-hand side, new group. You're going to enter new group name. So I'm going to call this AOP Tech Coaches. And you can see that when it pops up under my contact, starred, and then AOP Tech Coaches, there's nobody in this group. I can add their email addresses up at the top. So I'm going to add my name. I'm going to add in Aaron. Oops. And we'll just say that for now. And I can add more at any time. And now I have them all in the group here. And you can add in lots of different groups. So that way when I'm in Gmail, there we go, beautiful, it worked beautifully. I can start to type in that group name, and it'll, when I select it, it'll put all the emails in. So great for things like a parent list or something like that, when you just want to type in grade 8 parents and everybody's emails pop in there, things like that. So that's the big skill, and I can go in here and select these, and I can add more at any time to them if I wanted to come here and add in Annabelle now. She's added to that list as well. So that's the key skill in Google Contacts that might make an appearance for you. Awesome. 2 down, last one to go. We'll finish nicely on time with some space for some questions, or Aaron to share some things that have been in that back channel chat that I hope you're participating in. So I'll take a moment as I switch my screen to give that a plug. Make sure you join that back channel chat. We talked about contacts, essential skill, create a group. The last thing we're going to talk about today are Google Groups. And I switched back to my personal account to talk about Google Groups for a moment. So just be mindful of the fact that there might be people or members of groups and names and things like that. I'll try as very best I can not to show any of those names or different things like that. But a Google group doesn't make a lot of sense without kind of having a little bit of a view. So there's a couple things that are helpful to know when it comes to Google Groups. Why might you use a Google group and how you create it? Some general group information and permissions, adding or inviting members and sharing information. Again, all of these skills are featured in the video you have in the resources for future reference. So I am in, and actually let me back out for just a moment. So how do I get to Google Groups? I'm going to use my apps launcher that's in the top right hand corner again, and I can select groups from there. Know that the back end to most of these are whatever the tool is, .google.com. So groups.google.com, just like drive.google.com. Similar. When you are here in Google Groups, I'm going to go into my groups currently. So my groups are ones that I am enrolled in or are a manager of. And I know which ones I'm a manager of because it'll tell me that I am an owner of these messages or of that Google group. And really what a Google group most often is used for is a discussion forum. Personally, I think it works best if you are not necessarily in the same school, or if you're working with students. Google Classroom would be the more appropriate place for students. I've just personally found myself that being able to connect with people across a wide range when I'm in Google Groups seems to always be the most successful, rather than in building, especially in our small schools. It doesn't mean it doesn't work like that. I'm absolutely positive it could. I just tend to wind up seeing more often that across buildings, Google Groups is an easy place to have one of those kind of discussion forums without it being a true social media type thing. You can see there are some groups that aren't really in use I have here to manage, and they're going to kind of be my examples. There's one for tech teachers across the Archdiocese. So if you're new to the Archdiocese, or you are a tech teacher or a technology champion in your school building, we would love to add you to that Google group to be able to ask questions and share resources. So if that's something you're interested in, you can always reach out to Aaron, Annabelle, or myself, and we'll get you in. The Pac-10 group is a super popular Google Groups group based off of the Connolly Summer Tech Academy. So lots of people are a part of that. And again, share, collaborate in a really safe space. Over here on the right hand side, I can always opt to leave a group. And what the box next to that lets me know how often I would receive a message. And I have some options. I can not receive email updates for something. I can get a daily summary. I can get combined updates. So every 25 messages, I would get an email for, or every single new message. So because I'm one of the managers on this AOP Technology Educators, I want to see every message individually that comes through on that discussion board. But for Pac-10, because there's a lot of discussion that happens sometimes, I want to see it in a daily summary rather than every message. And I think for me personally, it's just the difference between being a participant and versus a manager. But you can choose whatever works best for you, and I encourage you to do so. I'm going to jump into a group that I have, and you can see there's not a lot that's in here right now, but I could create a new topic that would be for my discussion post. And over here on the right hand side is that gear wheel again, which we know universal icon for settings, and that's what I want to pop into here. I can change the display density just like Gmail. I'm going to go into group settings. So this is kind of the back end when you manage a group. You can go into the settings, and these are all the things that you set when you create a new group, which is just the create a new group button, and then it would be using a very similar form to start that group up. You give a description in here, and here's some of the piece that's in here, allowing users to post to the group. So you want to make sure that if you're doing a discussion forum, and there's a couple different types of Google groups, I'm going to pop open a graphic from Google momentarily, that you want to, if you want interaction, you want to make sure that either the folks in that community can post by replying to the auto email that they get, or that they can come to the Google group on the web and be able to post. So if the interaction is important to you, you want to make sure you have one, if not both of those. On the left-hand side are all the general pieces. If I go to permissions, basic permissions, you can see that all members of this group can view the topics. All members of the group can post. That's the other place that you want to double check that you have permissions set for people to be able to post. So basic permissions, post, general information basically says how they can post, either web, mail messages, or both. Join the group, those who ask, those who are invited. It's like that. Members. Members is the very first option on your left-hand side. You can see all members. In this case, this group is just me. I'll pop into one that has more so you can have a quick idea of what that's like on the grand scheme later. But you can invite folks as well as having them find you if you're public there. You can enter their email addresses to invite them and write them an invitation. I've invited you to join, and they'll get a little join button. Or if you want to be able to directly add them, you would put their emails in and say, welcome to. You kind of can decide based upon the group how that might work for you. Then if you're a manager of that group, you would see any join requests under join requests. So let me pop into one quickly just so you can have a quick idea. One of the things that Google Groups will ask when you create a new one is the type of group that you want. And I just pulled up G Suite's Learning Center on this because there are a couple types, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about probably the one you're looking for. There's an email list, and that's really just a Google group to send out mailing lists. There's not a lot of interaction. Web forum is probably what you're looking for if you're looking for discussion back and forth. And more often than not, that's what I default to choosing on almost every Google group that I create. Q&A is that folks ask questions and the owners or managers and specific questions get answered for them by a reliable source. Collaborative inbox, kind of, and this is tricky because I've never seen it actually in practice, if I'm being quite honest. It uses a common email address to respond to requests. More often, or most often, probably what you want is the web forum. I'm going to go into this tech coaching one. I am a member of this. This is from technology coaches who met at ISTE. I'm going to go in just very briefly so you can see that there's discussion boards in here. So that's really what this kind of Google Groups I see most effectively learns together. You can see this person asked, Tyler asked, what LMS did you use? And there's 17 different responses. You can kind of share information back and forth in that manner. I am not a manager of that group, so I'm just a participant, and I've chosen send daily summaries on that group. Whereas with the AOP technology educators, because I'm a manager, I have every message because I don't want to miss anything from anybody. So that's a quick overview of the Google Groups, and I think the key things to know is that it's an awesome discussion forum. That's probably what most often Google Groups is used for. And you can have a couple of different settings both for yourself as a participant, things like being able to choose how often you receive messages, or when you're managing, that you can give different permission levels for posting. So with that, I'm going to pop over. Aaron, can you fill us in a little bit on any of the discussion happening on that back channel chat?
Well, Alyssa, it's been mighty quiet this evening. Is it okay if I go ahead and grab the presentation?
Yes.
All right. So once again, thank you, Alyssa. You did a great job of really going through some of the big ideas it's the level 1 examination is going to focus on. Keep in mind, every test is going to be different, and Google does require a confidentiality agreement. So it is really important to remember that certainly you can discuss how to do certain things, but if you have taken the exam, you don't want to post any test questions or anything like that on any sort of social media or anything like that. And certainly we also want to take this time to thank you, the attendees, for joining us this evening. We would love to connect with you on your social media program of choice. And when you are there, please don't forget to join, like, subscribe, and favorite us. In the next few days, you will be receiving a copy of this presentation and a feedback link. We encourage you to complete our survey as we greatly value your feedback. And last thing before we go, I would like to invite you to join us next month. We will be hosting our second webinar on Wednesday, November 14th, and it will be focusing on Google Calendar and Google Tasks. The registration is on our website at aoptech.org. Once again, Alyssa and I, along with the entire AOP Tech department, thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everyone.